Hey guys, Fix My Revolution again, and this time I want to show you my vocal mixing workflow. This workflow is all about metal shouts in this case. I don't have clean vocals in my songs because I'm a terrible singer. I just can't sing, but I'm a mediocre shouter, I guess. I do various shouts. I do a lot of fry screaming and a lot of false chord screaming. And in this case here, what I'm about to mix, there's only low false chord screams in the song. It's kind of a hardcore song. It's Fall of the Rider, one of my latest songs. And just because I show you this mixing workflow on low screams, on low false chord screams, that doesn't necessarily mean that this doesn't work on fry screams. Sure, a few compressor settings and a few equalizer settings are gonna be obviously different, but the main workflow, the steps that I follow and everything, the setup of the tracks, the routing, and even the effect chains stay 90% of the time stay the same. So take this with a grain of salt. This video should not be a how-to in general, like this is how to mix vocals, because the 100% solution doesn't exist on vocal mixing. There are so many different voices. Everyone's voice is different. You have so many microphone options, preamp options, audio interface options, and every song needs different vocal treatment to make the vocals sit in the mix. And even on my songs, I always have the same voice. I always shout the same way. It sounds the same way. I always use the same microphone. I always use the same preamp. But despite of that, every song ends up having a different EQ curve because my voice just needs to sit differently in a different song because that song feels differently. Okay, so keep that in mind while following through that workflow. And let's start off with a little bit of playback here. This is my finished song, Fall of the Rider. I'm just gonna give you a sneak peek here, how that sounds like. Okay, and maybe a little bit part of the chorus here. So, as you can see, there's not much going on. I have no vocal overdubs or something like that. I don't do, I generally don't like vocal overdubs in metal. That's a single, there are only single tracks. Here is the single track for the verse. I have a single track for the chorus and a single track for the delay effect vocals, so to say. And now let's take a look at the setup here. First, I wanna start in the, no, I don't wanna start in the mixer. I have my master channel, sure, everything gets routed to the master channel. And here's the interesting part. I separate my vocals from the instruments. So you see this instrument bus here, and the routing is exactly what you see here. I got a guitar bus, a bass bus, drum bus. And those buses are all routed through the instrument bus. And this instrument bus again is routed through the master channel. and the vocal bus is not routed through the instrument bus. And that has a reason. If we check out the mixer and hop onto the instrument bus here, everything instrument related is running through this SSL bus compressor that is holding the mix together, the instrument mix. And I don't want the vocals to be affected by that compressor. So that's a general rule that I always follow. Vocals don't have anything to do with the instrument mix. The instruments and the vocals meet on the master channel on all my songs. This is very important. So I don't want to let the kick drum or the snare drum or the bass affect the vocal dynamics through a compressor, for example. Okay, so that makes me, or that enables me to make the vocals sit on top of the instrument mix, but in a way so it merges perfectly with the mix. It's crisp, it's clean, it's transparent, and it's in the mix but on top of it very, very clearly. So then next thing, very important one, before I start mixing vocals, I nearly finish my instrument mix 100%. I have a very, very, very polished instrument mix going on before I start looking at the vocals. That is something you might dislike, but I really like to have that final feel of the song already going when I mix my vocals into that. That has to do with my general writing workflow, because I write music before lyrics and music before vocal recording. I record all my music and I mix all my music before I hit the studio again and write lyrics and record the vocals. So this is kind of, that adapts to that. So that is kind of the reason why I always polish my mix before I even start looking at the vocals. Okay. Therefore, let's mute the vocal bus for a second here and take a look at the master channel. What's going on here? So I already have some EQ here, some low and high cut. I have a multiband compressor going on here, and I have a saturator, and I have a mastering limiter going on here. And I mix my vocals into that. So those plugins here are there because of my instrument mix. Those are polishing plugins that polish my final instrument mix. So if I play the instrument mix back, it sounds very, very polished, very clean. So and I take this as my foundation to start mixing vocals. So let's do that. First, I'm gonna disable all my plugins here on my vocal channels. So I wanna start right from the scratch for you. And all the sends. And now let's solo the verse here. Okay. So how do my vocals sound raw? First thing to note, I have a treated room where I record my vocals. It's a very, very dead room. You can clap your hands and you have no echo whatsoever coming back from the walls or the ceiling. That's very important. I like a very, very dry or dead room to record my vocals in. If I need some ambience or some reverb on my vocals, especially when I mix other singers that have a clean voice and not necessarily shouting, I add that later via plugins in the box. So I don't use any room or ambience in the recording room for my vocal mixes. Good. The equipment that I use is usually an Shure SM7B. I think that's the most state-of-the-art shouting microphone. And to boost my signal, I use Studio Project's VTB1 tube preamp. And this preamp is a little bit special. It has a tube blend knob, and that tube blend knob I always set to noon, 12 o'clock, because that sounds the best. It compresses the vocals a little bit, but other than that, there's no effects going on before the signal chain hits the interface. So I don't do pre-interface compression. I don't compress outboard with any outboard equipment. I just have my microphone and a preamp plugged into my audio interface, okay? So, as you can see, I record very hot with like a maybe 5 dB headroom. So there's not that much space, but my preamp enables me to do that because due to the tube saturation, my vocals get a little bit compressed. So this is not me being 100% professional and having great vocal or shouting dynamics here. This is not my job that I did right here. I'm not that good of a shouter, but you can see that the tube preamp really does a good job at maintaining dynamics. Sure, you have some spikes here and there, but it's a signal that you can mix very, very, very nicely. So let's take a listen how that sounds like. Raw vocals always sound shitty, and it's my own voice. I dislike my own voice, so that really sounds bad for me right now.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a horizon. Good times, feeling free, breathing in until the force tears off my skin.
Losing a little bit of air at the end, but this is actually a one take. I didn't cut there or anything, and I just want to keep that. So yeah, I could have re-recorded the end there, losing a little bit of power, but whatever. I kept the one take. I was pretty proud of that take, actually. So how do I start mixing? Now, the first thing that I usually throw on my raw tracks is a De-Esser. I start off with a De-Esser, and there's not much going on. This is the De-Esser of iZotope Nectar 2, which is a very rare plugin because there are not many plugins out there which are especially built for vocals. And Nectar 2 from iZotope is one of those plugins. It's not cheap, but it's well worth the money. So you see me de-essing here. Everything else is disabled. I don't do any other mixing in that plugin. Low cut at 2.5 kilohertz here for the De-Esser, and I de-ess -6 dB. It looks like that.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too...
So we have around 4.5 dB of gain reduction on the S sounds. But you have to be really cautious with a De-Esser because the sound starts to sound like this very quickly, okay? So if you overdo it with a De-Esser, your sound starts to sound like this, and that's something you don't want, okay? So play around with that knob here, how much you want to de-ess. You want to get rid of your sharp S and T sounds, but -6 worked for my voice in this case. You might end up with a different setting on your voice. Like I said, there's so much diversity, I cannot tell you -6 is always the way to go. That doesn't work. But De-Esser is the first thing in line here for my vocal mix. Then I come up with a nice trick that I have from Joel Wannasek. I watched him mix Machine Head, a song of Machine Head on Nail the Mix, and he did that little trick with a multiband compressor, and that really, really stunned me. And I was like, oh, I have to try that out, and it worked great. So what is going on here? This is an extreme thing. Usually what happens with your raw vocals, they sound way too boxy in your mix. If I go ahead and play back my vocal mix right now with my finished instrumental mix. That's how it sounds like right now.
Wrong place, wrong time, like it's on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up alright. Never thought I would make it back home.
That's way too boxy. That just doesn't sound good. That doesn't fit. The vocals are somewhere above the mix, and it's kind of separated from the instruments. So usually what you do is you wanna scoop out your vocal mix a little bit, especially on metal shouts. That's a common thing that many mixing engineers do. They scoop out like 400, 800 hertz, the boxy frequencies. But instead of using an EQ for that, I saw Joel Wannasek do it with a multiband compressor, and the settings he used on that multiband compressor are rather interesting, because every band, I have 5 here. These are the standard settings from the Pro MB of FabFilter, by the way. We got 5 bands here, and I select them all, and they all have the same setting. So usually what you do is, yeah, you have faster attack and release times for higher frequencies, because higher frequencies are per definition are faster, so you need faster attack and release times. But he didn't do that. He chose like a 20% attack, 20% release, and a range of -30. That just means each band is allowed to compress up to -30 dB, okay? Or have a gain reduction of -30 dB. If I raise that and put it like this, every band would have a maximum gain reduction of -2.9 dB. And I pull that down all the way. So the compressor or each band is finally allowed to even compress my signal 30 dB if it needs to. And now you have that threshold ending up at -35 dB for every single band. And I'm gonna set that to 0 and back down my output level here. I don't want to blast your speakers. So in this setting right now with the threshold of 0 dB, this multiband compressor does absolutely nothing, okay? And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna solo my track here, and I'm gonna pull down the threshold for all bands in parallel and listen to what happens to the sound.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a horizon. Good times, feeling free, breathing in until the force tears off my skin. Wrong place, wrong.
So what happens there is, because all the bands have the equal setting, the bands with the most energy in it will be compressed more like the bands with less energy in it. And usually the low and the low mid frequencies are the most energetic in a voice. So what happens is you kind of get that scooped out a mid to low end, and that it just works. I cannot explain that more. I just saw Joel Wannasek do that, and it just works. Listen to that difference. I'm gonna bypass that.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down.
That's kind of amazing. So it's like vacuum cleaning your frequency range just with a multiband compressor. I find that trick really, really amazing. Now I have to compensate for the gain reduction, and I'm gonna set my output level for +8 to make the levels. If I bypass the plugin, I want my levels to stay the same, just gain staging the right way. And this way I can compare the sound in the mix. So let's do that. I'm gonna play back the whole song again for you with that vocal, and let's bypass it, and then I'm gonna punch it in, and you'll immediately notice how well the shouts start sitting in the mix already, just because of that multiband compressor.
Wrong place, wrong time, like it's on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up alright. Never thought I would make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to horizon. Good time, feeling free, breathing.
So that just makes it fit by pulling out all those boxy frequencies in my voice. It's very interesting. I like that trick. But I cannot explain that in detail how it works. It just works. I don't know. So I strongly recommend you to try that out. If you have any kind of multiband compressor, try that and see if it works for your voice. Next in line, I have a single band compressor, a single band compressor is going on here. And the multiband compressor kind of evens out the dynamics of the vocals very well, but there are some spikes left over. And those leftover spikes I want to kill with a normal single band compressor. I'm opting for the rear comp of Cocos that ships with Reaper, but it's also available as a standalone download. The rear plug, I think it's called Rear Plugs bundle from Reaper. You can also download as a separate VST bundle for any other DAW that supports VST plugins. So this is a very basic setup here. 41 ratio, fairly quick attack with 25 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds release. You have to see what works on your vocals. And I got a minus 22 dB threshold. I'm looking for a gain reduction of somewhere between 3 and 5 dB maybe. So really evening out those high spikes on my vocals.
Wrong place, wrong time, like it's on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up alright. Never thought I would make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to horizon. Good time, feeling free, breathing until I'm born.
So the vocals even start sitting in the mix even better because the dynamic range is now reduced to a fairly good level. Good. Now, next in line, I do compression before EQ. Some people would again disagree with me. Some like EQ before compression. One argument why you wanna choose EQ before compression would be, well, I don't want to compress frequencies that I don't need anyway. But since I have this multiband compressor trick here that filters out my unwanted boxy frequencies already, it's kind of EQ before compression, because this multiband compressor is not actually working as a compressor, but more like an equalizer for me with that multiband compressor trick here. So I kind of have EQ before compression, and this is why I can put my shaping EQs, how I want to shape my voice after compression, and that's what I'm doing here. So this is not really fixing any huge problems with the voice, but rather adjusting the voice to sound like I want it to be in the mix. So as you can see, you don't have like a very shallow band here doing something like this, filtering out any fizz frequencies or anything, because my multiband compressor kind of already did that for me. So this is just scooping out the low mids here a little bit more, because I like that on my vocals, and my voice is very low mid heavy. You can maybe hear that. And if I'm shouting with my false chord technique, that is even more the case. And that's a general 2.5 kilohertz dip, a slight dip here, because 2.5 kilohertz I don't like rules necessarily, but I feel like 2.5 kilohertz sounds bad on every voice in a metal mix. That's kind of a thing that I experience through the last 10 years of mixing vocals. That is really a thing that I almost always do, and it doesn't matter what voice I have as a fundamental basis. Good. You see me low cutting here a little bit. This is not the final vocal low cut. It's only 140 hertz because there is another multiband compressor going on after EQing, and I don't want to affect that multiband compressor with low unneeded frequencies that I surely don't need in my vocals at all, because nobody in a metal mix ever uses frequencies below 150 hertz. I think that's a common rule. Now, for the high pass, I already cut off some high frequencies here above 11 kilohertz, because that's another that really top high-end range of a vocal you just don't need. So cut it off as early as you can in your effect chain. I got a slight boost at about 9 kilohertz here. That's where the top and the really top end, pristine, expansive frequencies of my voice is located at. So before cutting the rest above that away, I'm just going ahead and boost that slight top end here. Let's make a quick comparison. This guy is disabled at the moment. I'm going to solo it. Just see what that EQ does. And like I said before, you could end up with a total different EQ here for your voice. This is nothing that you can look at and apply to your voice and expect to sound good. That won't work. You have to work on your own EQ curves regarding to your own voice, right? Cool.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up far right. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a horizon. Good times, feeling free, breathing in until I'm forced to.
So a very, very slight and subtle change here. Just dipping out the boxiness a little bit more. But that EQ, as drastic as it may look like, it doesn't affect the vocal as much as you would think it would. Now, the next EQ is a Neve, because Neve is a dirty bitch. And Neve, whoever calls a Neve a clean EQ is definitely wrong, because Neve is, it's just the original circuit of a Neve EQ, of the old Neve console EQs. They are dirty bitches. They add a lot of frequency response, and I cannot really explain what it does, but it's a dirty bitch. And it's, in many cases, it just sounds right what it does, but there are also as many cases where you don't want to use a Neve because you need very transparent, very transparent EQs that don't add much of side effects to your sound. But in this case, on my vocals, I like that. And I'm not boosting any frequencies here. I'm dipping out a little bit of some top end here at 5.6 kilohertz, and I'm dipping out something around 680. And the rest, I put this Neve EQ just on my vocals because it appeals to it. It makes it sound cool due to its dirtiness. Not much going on here, just those two slight dips. Now let's do another quick comparison.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up far right. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a right.
I think you really need extremely good monitors to hear that, what's going on here. It's such a subtle difference. And if you actually don't know what a Neve does to your sound, you don't hear it. It's just a very subjective thing and a taste thing. I just like Neve, it's my taste. And if if you were now like, okay, I didn't hear anything, then well, don't do it. It's just an addition that I like to do. Now, here's another very important plugin. Again, a multiband compressor. Oh, let's wait. I think I'm stepping through a little bit too fast here without doing some A/B testing. I wanna A/B the vocals. The current state, how the current state of the vocal sounds in the mix. I always forget that on my how-to, sorry. So I'm gonna solo my vocals again, and I'm gonna disable the whole plugins. So my De-Esser, that multiband compression trick, single band compressor, and the both EQs. I'm gonna disable those with this button here, and we can see what these 5 plugins do to my voice and how that affects the overall vocal mix. Okay, so let's go. I'm gonna start bypassed.
Wrong place, wrong time, like it's on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up alright. Never thought I would make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to alright. The sun, good time, feeling free, breathing until I'm forced to some mask.
Soloed.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up alright. Never thought I would make it back home.
A really hard scoop there, I guess. So, how do we go on with that? I like to add another multiband compressor, but this is now no trickery. This is standard multiband compression. I want to get each band under control a little bit more, adjust the dynamic range of each band, and I want to use it as kind of an EQ. So you see me like dipping out the band between 100 and 400 hertz here a little bit, because I felt it just was a little bit too much down there, and I had a little bit too much high end going on here above 7.2 kilohertz, for example. This is just these are adjustments that I decide doing while listening to the mix. So what I do here is I enable this plugin. I set up my bands. I listen to the overall song with all music going. This band I didn't like. So again, a very subtle change, just evening out the dynamic range of each frequency band a little bit more to get that static vocal sound going without any words that you cannot understand and others that are too loud. This is just basic multiband compression as everyone uses it on vocals. Cool. Now there is the, for my voice, the most important thing that's going on, and that is a harmonizer or a doubler or whatever you want to call that. Usually you can achieve the same result with overdubbing your own voices, like taking 2 or 3 or 4 different takes and layering them in different time settings and different volume levels. But I rather do that with the harmonizer of Nectar 2, because this thing is amazing. First, I want to show you how it sounds like, and then I want to talk about what I exactly did here, so you can follow that. Let's solo that. And in the end, I really have to explain to you why I make that decision. And that is related, if you take a look at, or that is related to the overall feel of the song, how I want my vocals to sound on that specific song. Here we have a rather hardcore, heavy song, and I want my vocals to be very wide and big and really aggressive, straightforward. Some people won't like that. So some people gonna be like, I don't know if I would do that on my mix. If that's not your taste, well, don't do it. But I like that effect very much. It's rather in an effect than a mixing thing, okay? So please take it with a grain of salt, take it as what it is. It's just an additional fattening effect for your voice, so to say. So keep that in mind. And I'm gonna bypass this here. So we start with the normal vocals, and then I'm gonna punch in this effect, and you immediately hear what's going on behind the scenes.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a right.
Okay, so this is a rather drastic effect. You even can hear that while the song is playing. I mean, that's that's a reason why I throw this effect on, right? So let's bypass it again, listen to the whole song.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same summer, sun is going down. Chasing the wind.
So in my opinion, if this effect is not going, I feel like my voice is a little bit lost in the center of the mix. And that is what I want to work against. And now the Harmonizer in Nectar 2, what does it do? You have the option to add additional voices to your own track. And I decide to add 4 different voices in a different fashion. So you can see me add voice 1 is tuned down. You can tune either voice up, down, or you can let it play back in unison. So I tune down my voice 1, my additional single voice here, 1 octave. And I do that with voice 2 equally. So I add 2 additional voices, 1 octave down, and I add 2 additional voices in unison. So I got 5 voices of my single track. My original one, 2 tuned down an octave, and 2 in unison. Yeah. Good. But that's not all. It's not all happening in the mono space, you know. There's some widening going on. So what you can in this window see in this window is pan and gain. So I can pan each voice to a different side in the stereo image. And what you see me doing here is I pan voice 1 and 2 100% to the left and right. Voice 1 is 100% to the left, and voice 2 is 100% to the right. And the unison voices, I pan 60, 65, and 66 left and right. So a 2/3. And then I can adjust how much gain or how much volume I want to let these voices play back in regards or in relation to my original voice. This yellow dot here, that's my original voice, unprocessed. So I'm adding in those 4 voices here in that pan setting to my voice. And I'm gonna slide that fader up here, and you can clearly hear what that does.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a horizon. Good times, feeling free, breathing.
So if you overdo that, it starts to sound crappy. But you need to find a reasonable level here. Usually I'm like -10 dB in relation to my original voice. That works for me, may work differently for you. Let's solo those voices. So this is what's gonna be added to my voice.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong.
Those are the two voices an octave down.
Never thought I wouldn't make it back home.
And those are the unison voices. And combined.
Good times, feeling free, breathing
and with my original.
Forced tears off my skin. Wrong place, wrong time.
But there's something more to it. So we got pan and gain here. That's one setting. But I also have pitch and delay. And that is very important because if you let every voice play at the same beginning, or not the same beginning, at the same point in time, that is what I mean. So they're equally aligned. You will end up with a very, very phasey sounding voice, and you cannot really build a stereo image out of 5 voices that are playing back the same source. It's like copying your voice. Copying your voice only increases the volume. Nothing more, nothing less. That is what copying a track means. So what I do is I don't pitch those voices again. I don't use the pitch setting here. I could do that, like pitching up and down the single voices again. But I delay my additional voices here a little bit. So voice 1, the one that gets tuned down an octave, is delayed 5 milliseconds. That is a very short amount of time. Voice 3 is a unison, 10 milliseconds. Voice 2, the other one who gets tuned down, is 15 milliseconds. I just cannot click on it right here. And voice 4, the other unison voice, gets delayed 20. So I have my original voice starts here. Then I got a tuned down vocal, 5 milliseconds, unison 10 milliseconds, down tuned 15 milliseconds, unison 20. And I can adjust that delay with that slider here a little bit. So let's play around with that.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading off for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the...
So you can kind of play around with the stereo image of your additional voices a little bit. But I like that that 20 millisecond time span where I align my voices in it. That works the best for me. Yeah, and that's what I end up with here in my mix. Cool. So that is my finished voice mix. The voice is finished, but not my vocal mix in general. The voice is finished. Let's play that back with the music. That already sounds nice, and some people would go like, yeah, I like that. That is a sound that I like for a record. Let's go with that. Don't change anything more. Seal it, done. But I like to have a little bit more specialty to it. I don't know. I like a couple of effects. I don't want to overdo it in my mixes, but I want to let my voice sound a little bit more unique and different without changing my voice at all. I don't want to make my voice sound robotic or anything, but I just want to make it a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, some would yell cheater now, but everyone does that. Every shouting vocal has some tool to make it a little more aggressive, to work with the music more. I have very aggressive guitars. I have double kick going on, and I want my voice to be in the mix, you know. And if I have the chance to emphasize on that well, I'm gonna go for it and see if it works for me. And it actually did. So the first move that I do is I'm gonna add in some distortion to my voice. That is a very common thing a lot of audio engineers do actually. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna send this this vocal mix that we just heard, I'm gonna send this over to a distortion bus right here. And on this distortion bus, I do a couple of things. The first thing is I pitch my voice, the input signal here, up only a semitone, a little bit higher, because I realized that the distortion, the distorted vocals sound better when it is pitched a little bit higher and not at the level my voice is at. We're gonna compare that in a second. So that is not very important right now, but we're gonna compare that in a second, how that sounds like, or how that affects my voice in the mix. It's a really cool thing to know. So here's the plugin that does all the work. A heavy saturation on my voice. Now, how does that sound like? I'm gonna solo the distortion bus here, and it sounds terrible. I'm gonna warn you.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading off alright. Never thought I wouldn't make it back.
So that is a disgusting distortion on my shouts. I just distorted with that heavy distortion setting here from the FabFilter Saturn. Drive is like 50%. I lowered the dynamics a little bit to minus 0.3. Frequency is set to 250 Hertz. So everything above that gets distorted. And the mix is actually 100%. So no dry signal comes out of this signal chain. And what I do after that is I low cut this distorted voice, not all my voice. I'm not distorting the input signal, but I'm distorting, I'm low cutting only my distorted voice, okay? So I don't want to have any sub-low frequencies going on in this distorted signal. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna merge my original vocal tone here that I mixed earlier with this distorted tone, and I'm gonna show you what that does to your vocal. So I'm gonna solo that, and I'm gonna raise the distortion bus here while playing, and take a listen what that sounds like.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading off alright. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a horizon. Good times, feeling free, breathing in until the force tears off my skin.
And here's the thing. If you overdo that effect, it will sound crappy. And nobody believes you that that is your own voice. Nobody sounds like this.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my...
That is bullshit. But you want to listen back to your mix, and you want to find a level of that distortion where you as an audio engineer hear it, that it emphasizes on the aggression of the mix, of the vocal mix, when listening to the overall song, but you don't hear the effect necessary. You don't want to have anybody sit in front of your monitors and be like, okay, I'm listening to your song, and I can clearly hear that there is some vocal distortion going on. You don't want to have that. It's like putting reverb on vocals. You want a subtle thing that you don't really recognize that it's there. It is there, but you don't know it. It just sounds good, okay? That's how you want to approach that distorted bus here. I ended up using a value of minus 6 dB. That works very, very good for me. So I'm gonna play back the whole mix, and I'm gonna mute and unmute the distortion bus, and let's see if we can actually hear it, or if it's just like a very subjective change to the aggressiveness, to the aggression of the vocals.
Wrong place,
Let's do that soloed again.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, and it's going down. Chasing the wind to horizon.
So I really like that effect. It gives the voice a little bit more of that, a little bit more bite. I want that in my songs, and it just works without overdoing it. Don't overdo this effect. So now what's missing? Two things, a little bit compression on the vocal bus that we're gonna do in a minute, but I like to add a tiny bit of reverb to my shouts. Usually if you have a metal mix and you have very aggressive shouts, and especially on those hardcore mixes like this song is here, you don't want to add in like excessive reverb tails to your shouts. That sounds ass. So don't do that, but a little bit of everything I want to have there. I want to give my voice a little bit of space, a little bit of room, not just this focused mono-centered, but a little bit more around that. That's what I want to achieve. So I use 3 different reverbs on my shouts and not much of each one. I have a room reverb, a hall, and a plate. All from IK Multimedia, CSR, Classic Studio Reverb Bundle. All look like the same, just in a different color. And you can see the reverb times, the decay times are very, very short. So the room has a decay time of 163 milliseconds. Hall, a little bit longer, 700 milliseconds. And the plate, 425 milliseconds. That's not like 3 seconds, doing, okay? You don't want to have that. And this is like the same with the distortion and the harmony. It's taste dependent. Some people like reverb on their metal vocals, others don't. I like it, I use it. If you don't like it, don't use it, okay? We will make a comparison in a minute. Only the shouts without any distortion and reverb effects, and the shouts with the distortion and reverb, and what that kind of adds to the voice. And then you can decide, okay, do I want to do that, or is that nothing for me? Cool. I'm gonna solo what the reverbs all together do. I don't want to step through each of them. That makes no sense. I expect you to know how a room, a hall, and a plate sounds like, right? So here's all 3 together. Or not. I should enable the sense. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. If I go ahead and add that, well, let's just mute it first and then punch it in.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to horizon.
And you may think, oh, that's a lot of reverb, but if you listen to that in the whole mix, reverb tends to disappear very quickly. So let's do that again in the whole mix.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading out for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to horizon. Good time, feeling free.
And very, very subtle. There, you can, if you know it, it's there, you can hear it. If you don't know it, probably you don't even recognize that there is any reverb on it. Even though you can hear it very clearly if you solo the vocals without the instruments. Cool. Let's listen to that real quick with and without the distortion channels here. That's what I said a minute before. All right. So here you have it. Distortion and reverbs, just add that little bit more to the vocals, and that is my taste. I like it. If you don't like it, don't do it. Cool. Vocal bus is a little single band compressor. I actually don't use this in this song. I don't need it. I explained to you why that rear comp is on there. That's just because I imported my template for the vocal bus. And I'm gonna explain to you why it's there. Sometimes in a mix you have overlaying vocals, like you end with a verse and there's already some words of the chorus going on, or the pre-chorus. And 2 or 3 words like overlap. And the problem with overlapping vocals is that they increase the overall volume of the vocals a little bit. And you don't want to let that to happen. If you have overlapping vocals, you want them to have the same volume like if only one of those tracks were played. And this is exactly what that compressor does. So this compressor does only kick in and has a little bit of gain reduction, like 1 or 2 dB, when you have overlapping vocals. So this threshold is exactly set up in a way that it doesn't affect anything in the vocals when playing a single track. But if you have overlaying vocals, it decreases the volume a little bit, not by much. So what I can do right here is actually delete it, because in this song right here, let's confirm that I don't have any overlapping vocals. Okay. Final thing to do, low cut and high cut. Very, very essential. Cut away frequencies you don't need. And on vocals especially, that's a really huge chunk of the low end. You can see me cut at 200 hertz. That's kind of a lot. Let's listen to that.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to a horizon.
Like all the low end resonance gets cut away, and you wanna go very far with that, as far as you can. And how do you come up with that frequency? Well, you listen to your overall song and you adjust that frequency. You slide it up further to the right, and you do that until you notice a change in your mix. So if you can hear it in the overall mix that your vocal suddenly lack a low end, you pull back the frequencies a little bit again and you're good to go. So I'm just grabbing this frequency band right here. I play back the song.
Wrong place, wrong time, luck is on my side. Sometimes I wonder what the fuck I'm doing wrong. Sunny day, not too cold, heading up for a ride. Never thought I wouldn't make it back home.
That makes no sense.
Chasing the wind to a horizon. Good time, feeling free, breathing until I'm forced tears off my skin.
So I end up around 200 hertz here. And the same goes for the high cut, by the way. I ended up at 11,000. You take that, like you go for 24 kilohertz, and you pull it from the right to the left, and you try to find that balance where your vocal just sounds right. Okay? That's all there is to that. cut away frequencies that you don't need. It enhances the transparency of your mix greatly. That's basically it. I want to make a addition to my chorus real quick. It's nearly the same, nearly. The first thing you can hear is that it has delay on it on a single track here. If I enabled all the plugins, by the way. Let's do that real quick. So the effect chain is exactly the same, as you can see, but there are some difference in it. I want to show you those real quick. Let's go for the wide part. You can see me naming that shouts wide. Why is that? I use that as a fattening effect for the chorus. I want my vocals in the chorus to sound a little bit bigger than in the verse. That just works to the emotions, to the feel of the song. It makes the chorus a heavier part. So the only thing I do differently to the shallow vocals is that in my Nectar plugin, in my Harmonizer, I raise the volume of these additional voices by like, what's that? 4 dB. So instead of minus 10 dB on the verse, I'm gonna add minus 6 dB of additional voices. If you compare that, well, that's not much. This is the verse.
I'm feeling free, breathing in until the force tears off my skin. It's happening once again.
So there's more of this, more voices, more everything. And that's the only thing I do here. And then on the delay track, well, as you could imagine, well, I just use an analog delay for effect purposes like this right here.
The fall, the pain.
Very difficult lyrics, by the way. Okay. And now here's the very, very last thing. What I do like, because distortion sounds a little bit dry when you add it, like this right here.
Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same.
And so it doesn't sound that sterile. I send this distortion a little bit to the room reverb. Minus 8 dB here, so not 0 dB, not everything. And so we get this.
Never thought I wouldn't make it back home. Same road, same sound, sun is going down. Chasing the wind to horizon. Good.
Okay, so it adds that little bit of room to the distortion so it doesn't sound that sterile. And that's basically our vocal mix. So here it is again. Finished and polished. Well, that's it. We're done. I hope you liked that video. I hope it helps you with your vocal mix. And well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate that you are still watching. If you are, it's like an hour of a video. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Goodbye.